Hi everyone, this is Ray Phillips of Precision Driving Analytics. And besides being a data engineer and race engineer and driver coach, I also sell data and video equipment. And one of my big sellers is the uh, VBox HD2 systems made by RaceLogic. They look like this here. This is the front of it. Um, it's got the cooling fins on top. It's got a number of items that you can plug in with LEMO connectors on the back, including a GPS antenna, two cameras, CAN, power, etc., microphone. So it's a great system to use. A lot of race teams love it, and a lot of driver coaches love it because basically everything gets recorded on an SD card, which goes in this slot here, kind of hard for you to see. Um, but basically everything is controlled with that SD card. So, and to have what you want to see on the video, you have to configure a scene. Usually, I'll install a scene for my customers that buy the system from me, um, and the scenes are specific to whatever car they're going in, and I'll get into that here. Um, but first, what I'm going to do is talk about the VBox video software because that's where you create the scene. And there's a lot of capabilities of that software that I don't think a lot of people recognize that it can do. So I want to go over some of the basics in this video, and I'll probably do, you know, two or three more videos to go over other aspects of the software. So with that being said, I'm going to dive right in. I'm going to share my screen. All right, so here is the uh, VBox video software. Right now, there's no scene loaded. Um, I'm going to load a scene. So if I just go to File, and I'm going to just pull up one of these basic ones here, the scene 1 miles per hour. These are one of the default ones, and I believe this is the one that's loaded on the um, VBox video systems, HD2 systems, when they go out from the factory. So in this scene, what we have is we have a track map that'll appear here, camera two, the timing box that shows, let's see, the current lap time there, the lap, the best lap, and the last lap. And then we have a mile speedometer here showing miles an hour, and then G or friction circle with some digital readouts here. Like this one is combined G's, and this one is miles an hour. So this is pretty basic, obviously. This is not pulling any CAN data or anything like that. But I'm going to go through some of these items and I'll show you how to configure like CAN data and some other items. So if I go to settings, first thing that shows up here is CAN. So like I said, this one is not pulling CAN from anything. It's not configured to do so. But late RaceLogic has a vehicle database that you can pull from. And so it's set to the source's vehicle database. And if I click here, and there's all kinds of different vehicle brands here, including BMW, Porsche, Chevy, etc. There's also AIM, and which is not really a vehicle brand, but it's obviously another data equipment line that I sell. And you can grab the AIM SmartyCam stream from the dash. So, you can basically use those canned messages as part of the scene. Same with Motec. You can do the same thing with Motec. There's some configuration involved with the Motec, but it's easy, not hard to do at all. So you can get things like throttle brake, etc., from Motec or AIM, as well as all these other vehicle manufacturers. So I sell a lot of these pieces of equipment for Porsches. So I'm going to pull up Porsche, and let's say that it's going in a club sport. So 718 came in GT4 Club Sport. All right. So uh, RaceLogic gives you some information as to where to grab the CAN signal. And in this case, it's really nice because there's a DT connector in the passenger floorboard that you can just plug into. And the pinout for that is basically there's power ground, and they show you where the two CAN wires are, pin one and pin two. So, and they even show you the colors. So, um, yeah, all good information. If I click log, then I'm going to log all of these canned messages. And you can see if you scroll down here, you can uncheck whatever ones you want, but typically I'll log everything because everything that I log is going to show up in the Circuit Tools software, which is what you use to analyze the data. So, we've got tire pressures, tire temperatures, uh, probably wheel speeds, and all the basics like throttle, which is accelerator, pedal position, brake pressure, steering, etc. So this is a big part of getting what you want on the scene. And I get a lot of questions about CAN, and because these are all um, specific to the cars. The CAN protocols have to align with what the controller area network, or CAN, is sending out from the car. So if for some reason you're not getting CAN messages, then there's some diagnostics that you can do. One, make sure that the protocol is correct for that specific car. Two, make sure that you've got voltage in your CAN lines. So CAN high is typically around 3 volts, and you want to check it with the ignition on. And CAN low is typically about half of that, 1.5 volts, but it can vary. And if CAN messages are being sent, through the network, then those voltages can vary. But one thing to keep in mind is that CAN low is always going to be lower than CAN high. So that's one thing you can check. And usually if that's all right and the CAN protocol is correct, then you don't have much of a problem. But you do also have to make sure that the baud rate is correct. The baud rate is here. And these modes need to be correct, send, acknowledge, and terminated. So it doesn't hurt to, like, if you're not getting CAN messages, it doesn't hurt to play around with this stuff and see if you can get it working that way. Just try different combinations. You can also use like Pecan View, uh, which has basically a connector that you can, get the CAN wires to plug into and figure out what the baud rate is that way, and things like that. So CAN is becoming more and more important. So it's important to recognize how all that works. And there's plenty of videos on YouTube, et cetera, that talks about CAN. Another thing you can do is you can log all the CAN bus messages to a file. So if you click on this little box here, you can basically turn the ignition on, manually hit the record button on the HD2, hit your throttle pedal. I usually tell people do it fairly slowly. Throttle pedal, brake pedal, do that a number of times, turn the steering wheel left and right a number of times. And then you can hit the record button again and to stop recording. And that's going to log all those CAN messages. So there'll be an ASCII file that you can review, and RaceLogic can analyze that for you, or a good friend of mine, Mitch Minton, can analyze that for you as well. So there's ways of finding out, what these CAN messages should be, and so a DBC file could be created, and the DBC file has all those CAN messages that you logged. So you can go to user configurable, and then you can load a database. So then, you can keep all this stuff. Like if you want to add a CAN message, you can actually add it to everything that's here, or you can clear this all out and then load your own database and get that working in the scene. So lots of things you can do with this. And like I said, CAN messaging is extremely important these days with the modern vehicles. If you have a vintage car, there's another way you can go. You can do a RaceLogic module, like this micro input module. And this way you can get RPMs, revs here, and analog channels. So you can configure, like throttle, brake, steering, with some analog channels. So you could buy like aim sensors or Motec sensors, whatever you want, 0 to 5 volt sensors, and configure those to work in the scene with a micro input module. So that's extremely handy as well. Um, I'm going to go back to the vehicle database and I'm going to keep it with this Porsche. So I'm going to clear these out and I'm going to hit log here. All right. So getting back to some of the other settings, math channels, I'm going to skip over for right now. But I think I'll do another video on those because those are a little bit more complicated. Performance tests, OBD. OBD is if you're using this Bluetooth module. The performance tests, I don't see a lot of that being used in road racing, but you can do 0 to 60 kilometers per hour, or whatever you want, and as a performance test. Um, so you can configure all that stuff if you want to do it. General, um, it's got all sorts of settings in here. With the audio, you can do mono or stereo. It default is mono. You only have one microphone, but you can do a splitter cable and make it stereo if you like. Um, Automatic level control. I mean, there's all these different things, and typically I don't mess with any of this. So Bluetooth is if you're using a button. Frankly, I don't recommend doing that. I think setting it up for automatic recording is better. HDMI output, if you're gonna, right now you can see this is off, but if you want to stream um, your video and data, then you just need to put this on whatever you want. You can do only one of the two cameras with no graphics, or you can do both cameras with graphics. So that's even configurable. Logging, logging source. Most people just use the SD card that comes with the box, but you can also use a USB uh, uh, flash drive with a cable. So that's another thing you can do. You can change the prefix for your file name. So you can change the time. There's, again, all sorts of different settings. Um, you can change the logging mode to only when moving. And down here, you've got speed and time settings. You can also change it to something like RPMs. As soon as when RPMs come on, something like that, up to like 500 RPMs. So you can have it start recording as soon as the car starts if you did that. So that can be valuable sometimes. Serial, if you're using an OLED display, this needs to be checked. Smoothing, I've never messed with this. VBox controller, I've never messed with this either. And video, I generally leave these the same. I have increased the size of the file from like 2 GB to 4 GB. And I have had clients increase this from 30 frames per second to 60, but I think all of this works really well the way it is and not much reason to change it. So getting back to the scene, so we've got a track here. This is where the HD2 system will put a track, and there's a very large database of tracks available. And if you come over here in lap timing, you can look at the settings and show a track. So if I uncheck that, that box disappears. And if I recheck it, then it comes back. Auto detect. So again, it's got a bunch of tracks loaded, and normally there's no issue, but every once in a while, I have a client that's having an issue with the VBox detecting like a cart track that's in the same complex or some other start finish line, if they have tracks with multiple configurations. So you can uncheck this and then choose the track you want, So I go to United States. I know that Sonoma has a number of tracks, so I'm going to look at that. Um, so come down to Sonoma. So there, let's say I'm doing the Indy circuit, so and all these tracks are fairly similar. So if I choose the stock car version, then that's what it is. So you may have to manually change these because the start finish line isn't changing. That's always in the same spot. And you can configure position indicator. You can even use an image that you want to use instead of the dot. You can change the color. Yeah, you can do all sorts of stuff. You can change color of the track. You can even manually change the start finish line, etc. So there's all sorts of stuff that you can do just with the track alone. I'm going to leave this on auto detect. And you also have your second camera. So this is camera mode's picture in picture. Uh, and frankly, I've never veered away from picture in picture. That seems to be what everybody wants. It's extremely useful. And if you don't like it being there, then you can move it. You can just drag and put it wherever you want. So very configurable. Uh, so the other thing is you've got these gauges. You can change these gauges. Let's say that I want to add like throttle and brake and maybe RPM. So I can just come up here to a gauge, uh, and now I've got all these different gauges here that I can choose from, and some of these I've added. Um, so I'm looking for one with RPM. So I just saw it. There it is. So there's an RPM gauge. So now that brings that in. So now I can drag that and put it like over here or over here, wherever I want it. I can even expand it, but you see, if you do that, then there's one aspect that's not moving, and that's this needle. So you need to um, be aware of that as well. So, uh, but I think the needle's back in the right spot now. So I can move it here, and now let's say I want the speedometer to be in front of that. So I can click on the spot speedometer, and I can come over down to here, so bring to front. So now that puts the speedometer in the front. Um, and or I could do it the other way. I could um, make sure that I could put this one in the back like that. So the one thing that did do is it got rid of this G measures ball friction circle basically. So I'm going to do it the other way. I'm going to click on this and I'm going to move this to the back. So there I kept the G measures ball and I put the RPM gauge behind it. So let's say that I want to bring in throttle and brake as well. So I'm going to go to groups, which is right here. And all of these things have been kind of grouped together by RaceLogic. So let's bring in this throttle and brake. It always puts everything in the top left-hand corner. Um, Typically what I do is I click on something else and then click on it. So that's the other thing is you have to make sure that you don't grab just one part of the group. So I'm gonna I'm gonna move this out of the way, click on something else, and then now I've grabbed almost everything. I can grab that brake um, and move it back over here. So I'm gonna grab that. Come on. There. So move that back. So you can see that there's several different things involved in that particular group. I'm going to move this map back. So if I'm happy with those, now I've got to assign like the CAN messages to these items because that's where the RPM and the throttle and brake are going to get their values. So if I click on RPM, right now it's got the parameter as GPS, so that's not what I want. I want CAN, and now I can choose whatever um, I want to use. So in this case, I want to use engine speed. Okay. Uh, so the range in this particular one is 0 to 9,000 RPMs. And I can plug in a test value to see, okay, is like 8,000. There we go. So now it's lined up with 8,000. So that's working fine. I can do 5,000. That's lined up with 5,000. So, these things, they're basically just called needles. So basically, that's what you're configuring with that CAN message is that you're configuring that needle to point at the correct thing. And speed, um, we got a maximum value of 160. I could do test value of 50. And there you go. So it puts that needle where it needs to be. So for uh, brake pressure and throttle, I've got to do the same thing that I did with the RPM. I've got to assign the appropriate CAN channels to those bars. So it can be a little tricky with these bars. What I've learned is that to click on them, what you want to do is kind of click on the corner, and that the red box, it's very light, but you can see it there. It will show you what you clicked on. So in this case, I have clicked on the brake pressure bar. And it's the default is GPS satellite. So I don't want GPS satellites. I want CAN. So I'm going to change GPS to CAN. And then I'm going to find brake pressure, which is right there. So right now the test value is 5. If I put that at 100, then that's going to be full brake pressure. Now, I happen to know because this is a Porsche, this is in bar, but there is a way of figuring that out. And basically it's reading the same units that's being sent from the car. So if I go back over to my CAN messages, um, I played around with this before, so I know brake pressure is at the bottom, but here's brake pressure and here it is in bar. So that's not something you can change. That's just what it is. So if I go back to my scene, the brake pressure is set. So, uh, by the way, 100 bar is 1,450 PSI. So typically, that's plenty high enough to to set your bar at, um, your gauge at. I'll put it that way. So for throttle, same thing. So again, the default's GPS satellites. I want to change that to CAN, and I want to find the accelerator pedal position. So test value for whatever reason is 75.79. If I put that to 100, now it's at full throttle. So 50, that's half throttle. So that's pretty much it for today. Now I would just need to save this scene as whatever I want. So I'm not going to save it. I don't need this scene as something that I save. Um, but to get it on your SD card, if you're ready to do that, then you can just have your SD card plugged into your computer, make sure your computer's recognizing it, and click Save to SD, and that'll save it to your SD card, or you can load it onto your HD2. All right, so once the scene is loaded on the SD card, you want to make sure that your HD2 system is fully booted up. Uh, the OK light should be solid green, and that's the one on the far left here. And once you plug that SD card in, that light should start blinking rapidly. Other lights are going to flash as well, but that one pretty much continues to blink rapidly until it fully loads the scene. if for some reason the scene is still on the SD card, then that means it didn't load. So the system pulls the scene off of the SD card. And the scene should be saved at the root level of the SD card, not in a folder. If it's in a folder, it won't load. And that's basically it. You can check the scene and check your cameras with your VBox video app on your phone. That's the easiest way to do it. Just connect to it via Wi-Fi. The serial number is the password. So you'll see that serial number as the Wi-Fi to connect to. Just plug that same number in again. The caps matter, and that's your password unless you've changed it. So pretty simple. If there's anything I can do to help, please contact me at rphillips@drivinganalytics.com. Check out my services and the products I sell at precisiondrivinganalytics.com. And look forward to the next one. Hopefully this helped. Take care. Bye.